Time to call the special called meeting for the Elizabethton Board of Education to order. At this time, we'll ask you please stand and join us in a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of the flag.
Thank you. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we have time for citizens to speak, unusual in a special call meeting, we realize we have people that do want to share. I want to remind everyone of board policy, just in the interest of time and fairness. The board shall hold such special meetings as necessary to transact the business of the board. Such meetings shall be called by the chair when, in the chair's judgment, the interest of the schools require it, or when requested to do so by a majority of the board. Only business related to the call of the meeting and details related to agenda items shall be discussed or transacted by the board at a special meeting. Also, delegations must select one individual to speak on their behalf unless otherwise determined by the board. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the board. I think that's pretty much it. We realize this is not a typical meeting, and we did not have a sign up, so we really don't know if there's a large number of support here or if there's a large number of people who want to speak. Our preference would be is that if a number of people are going to say repetitive things, if there is a person that you want to delegate to speak on a specific item in the interest of everybody's time, I think that's a wise thing to do. Not knowing what's on everybody's mind, we'll try to move forward that way. But we do need to stick to the 5-minute time limit. If you would request or would not mind me doing that, if you're getting close, about 30 seconds out, I can give you a reminder that there's about 30 seconds. With that said, just if you don't mind me asking, just so we can try to plan, how many people do plan or want to speak? Okay. All right. So we do not have an order. There were about 6, I think, that I saw. So is there someone who would like to lead the charge? Okay. And again, if you would, when you come up, if you would state your name, your address, we'd appreciate it.
Yes. Dean Davison, and I live within the city limits of Elizabethton. Appreciate y'all's time, but I'm going to open us up in a word of prayer real quick. Dear Lord, we just thank you so much for this day. We thank you so much for our city. We thank you so much for the Board of Education. We thank you so much for the students and the concerned parents. Lord, I just pray that you be with us this evening. Just let us talk, think clearly, and we're all in the same boat trying to get the same result. We just pray that the outcome is what you would have for all of us. Pray all this in your name. Amen. I just want to open us up real quick. Just after y'all's last board meeting, and I was unable to attend that, but watched it back a couple of times. Became very concerned at the discussion I heard and the lack of discussion I heard, and then just a few minutes later, a pretty major decision was made that impacted, over 2,600 students and a tremendous amount of families in Elizabethton City. And I know that, all of us have a tendency to look at other areas, other school districts, other things that are going on, but just to be quite honest with you, we're concerned about the city of Elizabethton and the school system of Elizabethton. I don't live in Johnson City. I'm not concerned about Johnson City. I don't live in Kingsport or Bristol. I choose to live in Elizabethton. So just so you know, that's why me and several other people are here tonight, is I feel like we're all in the same boat. We're all trying to figure it out, and thank goodness these are, for the most part, elected positions, and we can come up here and talk with you guys and hopefully reason and come out with a favorable outcome for the students. So, there's so much conflicting data on COVID-19 as it relates to children and youth. It's led to a lot of fear, a lot of confusion in the school setting. So with previous known viruses, responsible parents have kept their kids home when they're sick and sent them to school when they're well. I guess a big determination of sick can be fever, et cetera. This applies especially during, the flu outbreaks that we've had in the past. We've had to dismiss school for a few days, or different parents would keep their kids home, so on and so forth. But never were masks mandated or even suggested in a flu outbreak. There was never any kind of mandatory or any kind of intimidation towards getting a flu vaccine by coaches, by teachers, people of authority in the school system. We've never had this before, but we're getting it now. Those decisions about vaccines and whether the kid went to school or not were made by the parents. Now we're in I even hesitate to use the word pandemic, but we're in a situation where we got 99.75% survival rate, and we'll get stats here just in a few minutes. But there's this mass hysteria, and to me, the Board of Education needs to be concerned about educating the students and let the parents do the parenting. Because if you look at the stats, we never freaked out about the flu. There's a lot higher percentage death rate of this age group from the flu than there is of COVID-19. So the folks that will be following me will be talking about some of these stats and a lot about how the parents feel here in the city of Elizabethton. So I'm going to take this is all I wanted to say. And then at the end, will there be discussion? Eddie, is that how we'll do this?
Yeah, the next item is discussion of COVID-19 safety protocols.
Okay. So what we're looking at, what we want to get across, is we don't want a mask mandate. We know we can opt out, and we absolutely don't want a quarantine for healthy kids. Because if we got students in there and they're healthy, I see absolutely no reason for them being at home for 2 weeks. This puts a strain on the family, and it puts a strain on the kid. And you'll hear from some students here in just a little bit. So that's our primary focus and our primary outcome. And for some reason, if things do close down, we fully expect these kids to be able to continue to learn remotely just like they did last year.
Okay, next. And again, just state name and address, and I appreciate that.
I'm Heather Odom. I live in Elizabethton. I'm a concerned mother of 3, all who have been enrolled in Elizabethton City Schools, and I'm an Elizabethton City taxpayer, and I've been a healthcare worker for 20 plus years. I'm just coming here tonight to be a voice for our children, for the people in the room, and for some teachers who can't voice their concerns. The statements I will give is information I have gathered in talking with people and what their real concerns are for our children. From a concerned single parent, how are we going to pay the rent when we cannot work because our healthy children are being quarantined? From a school teacher, I have a classroom full of first graders who should all still be in kindergarten because they're so far behind, but they couldn't be held back. So now I'm trying to catch them up, but I can't catch them up if they're not in front of me. I need them in front of me. I personally have a first grader who we decided as parents it would be best to hold him back, as we knew he wasn't ready to move forward because he has a sensory disorder and ADHD, and what a disservice as parents we would have done him and his teachers pushing him through knowing that he was not ready. From a school teacher, I need them with me to know that they are safe and being fed. I cannot leave my work at work. I'm bringing it home with me, and I'm losing sleep over concerns for these kids. From a school teacher, I need them with me because not all quarantine kids have parents at home to care for them. From a school teacher, I feel like you, but I cannot come and support. I'm going to watch from home in fear of losing my job. From students, coaches say get the vaccine so you don't have to quarantine and you'll get to play. From students, teachers say if you get vaccinated or wear a mask, you won't have to quarantine. From students, the principals say just wear your mask so it makes my job easier. From friends, I'll just put the mask on my children at school so they can play their sports, not get contact traced, quarantined, or bullied from other kids, teachers, or staff. And from everyone, why are we only concerned about this during school hours? Does this virus not exist during football, basketball, volleyball, band, or any other extracurricular activity? So far, the only answer you all have is mask and vaccinate, but as you will hear here tonight from stats and some methods that our speakers present, that is clearly not the answer. To further support that statement, Ballad Health made their own statement yesterday that 900 nurses were willing to give up their jobs over the vaccine mandate they were trying to implement. Not sure if you heard that, but if these frontline workers who are heroes and have worked day in and day out for the last 16 to 18 months that are called and have a passion for taking care of people, they are willing to quit their jobs over not taking this vaccine, then why would we want to inject ourselves or our children? As far as the contact tracing goes, the numbers that you all gave us are as follows: 193 quarantines, and out of those, you had 9 turn into positive cases. As you stated, you have not been keeping them separate from the quarantines from school and the outside quarantines. Those are 95% of kids who were well and at home. Contact tracing is not the solution because it is causing unnecessary workload on our already overworked and exhausted healthcare workers here in our own area. Based on your recommendations, students can test after day 5, and if negative, can return to school on day 8. If no testing is done, then they can return after day 10. So here we have all these healthy kids going to get tested based on the school's recommendations so they can come back to school and parents can go back to work. Do you know how much a COVID test costs? Co-pays can range anywhere between $20 to $100. Some have TennCare, and the ones without insurance, it can cost between $150 to $250. And then the fast result swabs at CVS are out of pocket $85. Where does that fit into a single parent's budget who has already had to miss work and barely making ends meet? Meanwhile, people who are truly sick and need to be there can't get tested or treated and are having to wait long hours, again, exhausting our healthcare workers. In closing, the community and the nation are divided, and it's with sadness that we all recognize this, but what we are doing has got to stop. We have to stop the division amongst ourselves. This is not a war against mask versus non-mask and vaccinated versus non-vaccinated. It is about us as parents having a choice of what is best for our children when it comes to medical decisions. With all the contradicting medical information, we as parents want to make the best informed decisions for our children and allow you as educators to educate them on what they are intended to learn. We must be great leaders for our kids because they are watching us, and if we don't stand for them, who will? Thank you.
Okay, Nick? Next.
I'm Kelly Merritt, and I live in Elizabethton. As I was walking through this breezeway, it brought back all sorts of memories. 13 or 14 years ago, I camped out here for a week to get my kids in this school system. So I love it here, my kids love it here, and thank you all for everything that you do. I'm the numbers person. Everything that I'm getting ready to give you came either from the Tennessee Health Department or the CDC or the Census, United States Census website. These numbers are as of 8/27/21. I worked all day, so I didn't reflect my numbers as today's health scoreboard from Ballad. Ballad Health's COVID scoreboard as of 8/27/21 lists 8 children in the hospital with COVID. Ballad covers 21 counties. And I think that number came to 10 today. According to the latest U.S. Census information, there are 132,160 kids under the age of 18 in Ballad Health's 21 counties. That means that 0.006% of the population of kids under 18 is hospitalized with COVID. 99.994% are not hospitalized. According to the latest U.S. Census information from 2010, there are 74.2 million kids in the U.S. under 18. According to the CDC, 454 under 18 have died since COVID began 17 months ago. This means 0.0006% of kids under the age of 18 have died as a result of COVID. In our region, that makes your survival rate of kids under the age of 18 99.9994% survival rate. The CDC reports in 2017-2018, the flu season resulted in 643 deaths in children under 18. Flu season typically runs from December to March. Most of the cases are reported during these months. The CDC reports an estimated 480 flu-related deaths in children under 18 for the 2018-2019 flu season, and an estimated 46,000 hospitalizations, more than all the children that have passed away from COVID in the last 17 months. In comparison, in 2019, according to the CDC, 2,400 teens were killed in vehicle crashes. This is personal to me. A lot of you all remember I had a brother pass away. Not one time did my parents ever say, Kelly, you can't drive. Kelly, you need to stay home. Also, I'm reading directly from the Tennessee Department of Health's school recommendations for COVID-19 in schools. This is the first page. Because the general public has not received training on proper selection and use of respiratory PPE, such as an N95, the determination of close contact should generally be made irrespective of whether the contact was wearing respiratory PPE. At this time, differential determination of close contact for those using face masks is not recommended.
Again, if you would, when you state your address, if you could give us normally people will give a physical, just like a street address, that just helps. It really doesn't matter, it's just for the record.
Hi guys, my name is Josh Hicks. I'm a county resident. My son started at T.A. Duggar this year. He was pretty excited about coming to T.A. Duggar. And I'm just kind of here to give you some of the background. I'm a 14-year paramedic veteran, so I've been on the front lines of this. I can tell you from personal experience that I have not hauled in or transported in the past 2 years one single child, not one. I am not very proactive on having my kids muzzle themselves with these masks. I don't believe in the process and the situation that it creates with that. My son has been overly excited to go to T.A. Duggar, and in this entire year he's been able to attend 2 days. Contact tracing, which is a deeply flawed system in itself, is keeping him from that. That is a situation that I'm having to deal with at home. I am very, very blessed to have family that's there to help me as well. He has some close family that he's able to kind of keep social structure. The things that I'm not really understanding with the contact tracing process are things that we address on the ambulance quite frequently. And, you know, when I'm working on an ambulance, I might be a little privy to information that a lot of people aren't. We, you know, at the onset of this, it was very, very big on us to have PPE because, you know, there was a shortage of it. We couldn't find it. We couldn't get enough of it. We were frontline workers. We were exposed to it. So we were given these masks, you know, the same masks that a lot of you have right now. Do you know what these masks do for us? I put these on to walk into the ER as a show. And then I take this mask I shove it back in my pocket. And that's where it is at. I don't understand the process of keeping this mask over my face only to remove it to speak, to eat, to drink, when the bottles, the utensils, the food is exposed to the same atmosphere. That situation is compounding into worse conditions for these kids. Now, on a physiological standpoint to this, there's a thing, and without getting into too much technical aspects of this, there's a thing in your respiratory drive. It's your acid-base buffer. And as a human, our blood pH is a little alkalinic. It's between 7.35 and 7.45. We're pretty fragile. We don't want to get too acidic. We don't want to get too alkalytic. Our acidity level climbs when our CO2 climbs. That creates carbonic acid in the blood. So when somebody is in cardiac arrest, per se, they're not breathing, their blood acid comes up, we give them sodium bicarb to kind of cancel that out. It's kind of a buffer to the buffer. You want to guess what you're doing when you're rebreathing air? You're not getting oxygen in. You're rebreathing that carbon dioxide. It is increasing your blood pH. Now, for a healthy child, in my son's case, a healthy 11-year-old, his system is going to compensate for that. In emergency medicine, children compensate a lot better than adults. So we don't see dire results to this until it is way far down the road. And then we're playing catch up with this. So I am not okay with this situation. It would be a lot better if we had some grounds that made sense to me as well, logically make sense. And the logical part of this that I'm talking about is I can tell you working on an ambulance, COVID doesn't go home at 3 p.m. COVID doesn't care if I'm 6 feet from the next person. But what it does care is if you're healthy, if you're taken care of, if you are in an environment that doesn't promote a viral atmosphere, just like the flu. And the flu did not mandate that I take this little comfort mechanism and put on my face for the world to see. Now, I understand being in certain positions that we feel the need to do something. We just have to do something. And I truly feel like that's where these mandates came from. That when we get into these positions, we have to give this outward show, this comfort blanket, this whoopee. It doesn't do anything. It's just a show. And it doesn't help the situation that we have. We could go on for days and days about situations that are created from just hiding the face. Child trafficking's gone up through the roof. We don't want to go into that. Then we talk about the
30 seconds.
We talk about the single moms and people that are at home. Like I said, I'm blessed, but a lot of people are not. This is a situation that concerns me because I am in and out of these ERs, and I see people, parents, who call 911 because they are concerned their child has been sent home and they don't understand the system. So I take them on an ambulance and I inundate an ER. I overcrowd an ER. I've sat in an ER for 5 hours with a patient on a stretcher that needed care, but there was no bed. Not for COVID, but for checks. I know I only had 30 seconds, and I will talk to a wall, so I'll go ahead and step down from that.
Okay, it is time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, let me just remind you, we did not have to have a time for citizens to speak. We chose to do that because we knew people wanted to, and we are respectfully giving you that time. You want us to listen, and we are. Again, I would appreciate it if you would just state your address, because that's what it says we're supposed to do. It doesn't do one thing other than follow what the guideline is, and we haven't had an address yet other than a city or a county. I would appreciate just kind of a two-way thing. We're respecting you, we're listening, and we'd just like to have at least that on the record, just because that's what our policy said. I appreciate that. So whoever's next.
Hey there, my name's Lisa Carter. I actually live at 316 West Pine Street in Johnson City. I'm here, I appreciate the information about the health system, but I'm here just to give a few more pieces of data for you all. Certainly do not envy your position and your decisions that you've got upcoming. obviously people all around the country are trying to navigate through this and figure out what's best for everybody involved. So right now, unfortunately, what we're seeing within this region is an increase in positivity rate in COVID-19 cases for kids. Of all the cases throughout the region, greater than 30% of those now are children under the age of 18. And so that phenomenon with the Delta variant is very different than the alpha strain of the virus that we learned so much about last winter. So unfortunately, COVID is spreading through kids. Like I said, about 30% of the positive cases are under the age of 18. Where that's concerning is those kids then are in houses oftentimes with grandparents and other people who are at high risk. And today within Ballad Health there are 311 patients in the hospital with COVID-19, which is very overwhelming to the health system altogether. Within Niswonger Children's Hospital, there's currently 10 patients receiving care for COVID-19. 7 of those are in ICU, 2 of those are unfortunately on the ventilator. Within the month of August, we saw 551 pediatric emergency department visits for COVID-19. And to put that in a little bit of perspective, we saw 308 visits with RSV virus. So the COVID numbers have now surpassed RSV as far as the viral spread throughout the region. Carter County, unfortunately, is considered a hot spot. It's second within the Northeast Tennessee region of spread at 1,498 cases. And unfortunately, the county overall has just slightly over a 30% vaccination rate overall. And so again, a lot of those are contributing to hospitalizations, which, as you've seen some of that data, also obviously being vaccinated, you can still get the virus if you're vaccinated, but your chances of being hospitalized or in ICU are greatly diminished if you're vaccinated. And so obviously, again, I appreciate your all's task that's ahead of you. Just wanted to share some more data so that you have some information as you're making some decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gladys Gillespie. I live here in this community, 809 South 2nd Street. I have 2 kids that I'm raising, single grandparent. I work with many of your all's sick, elderly. I do home health. So, with that being said, I feel like this is more than just the flu. In this community alone, over the weekend, we've lost 2 right here due to COVID. So my point is, if this mask is all we have to go with, trust me, mine are gonna wear them. My grandson goes to Eastside. He has, as a child, he had RSV, and he has asthma. Ever since day 1, I sent him out to Mr. Hurley to keep him. He had a mask. Now I sent him, but when we picked him up, he didn't. And I was like, Ro, why you don't have your mask on? And he said, nobody else has one on. And so I had to tell him, you know, if this is all we have to keep us working, keep food, keep our house, keep electric going, I'm the only provider, you gotta help me. So wear your mask. And so that's my thing. Until they can come up with something that will protect him, especially Amaya's a junior at Elizabethton, as soon as they said 12 to 16-year-olds can get a shot, we were at Walgreens the next morning. She wanted it. And as soon as we can get something for my 9-year-old, he's going, because I don't want to see either of my grandchildren on a ventilator, all because they're not protected. And if this is all we've got, hey, we've got to work with what we got. And so that's my points on the mask.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Thank you for meeting with us tonight. I appreciate that. My name is Sarah Pippin, and I live in Elizabethton, and I just submitted my address. I would rather not say it since we are being live streamed. These are some stats from Dr. Denise Sibley. She couldn't be with us tonight. She's very overwhelmed right now. So these are some stats that she has sent me that I would just like to tell you all. These are of August 29th. She's treated 1,767 patients. They have acute illness, and out of those patients, let me just read this, excuse me. I didn't know I'd be reading this, so, okay. 14 through 99, she's treated HIV, cancer, immunodeficiency, morbid obesity, smokers, asthmatics, and diabetics. They've had acute illness, prevention, post-exposure prophylaxis, long hauler COVID, vaccine injuries, and she's been treating those since March of 2020. She's had 0 on a ventilator and 0 deaths, no hospitalizations with early treatment. Vaccinated with COVID illness, first cases in February of 2020. USA began vaccination 12/17 of 19. Calls are now 75% vaccinated over the last 4 weeks. Have discovered some calling a lie about vaccination status, so they're telling her that they're not vaccinated. They think I won't treat them, but she has found out from the insurance and records that they have been vaccinated. Calls received from all states, including Hawaii, Alaska, and Canada. She says that in Washington County, for 6 months, from July 14th of 2019 through January 14th of 2020, into our mask mandate with a 95% uptake of mask wearing, that we had the highest cases of hospitalizations and deaths. So I just wanted to read you all those numbers so that you can take that into consideration from a medical doctor who is on the front lines of treating COVID. And just to keep that into perspective, there are other treatment options. There are other options available. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jason Ward. I live in the city of Elizabethton. I will let you guys know my address after the meeting is over. I'm not going to say it over top of the live stream. But I'm a junior at Elizabethton High School. Ever since the beginning of the COVID season, school has went completely downhill for not just me, but many more students. The beginning of my sophomore year was so completely different. It honestly made it hard for me to learn because I was so constantly focused on wearing a mask and making sure I was safe from COVID-19. But not long after, I came to the realization that the masks given and the masks that we were forced to wear don't even work. But some people may think so, but many proven tests have shown that they don't. I was so tired of wearing my mask at the end of my sophomore year that I stood up to one of my teachers showing that I should have a decision or a right to choose if I want to wear my mask or not. After I did not comply with my teacher, she had showed anger towards me and my noncompliance, and she said she was disappointed in me and sent me to the office. Many of my classmates were amazed that I was the one to finally stand up to not wear my mask and showed that we have the decision to wear the mask or not. After I was kicked out of class, I didn't go back to the school for the rest of the year, not hearing about anyone talk about what I had done. A couple days ago, a student in the class that I was kicked out of, they told the story to the rest of my class that I was in during that period. They told the story like I was a hero standing up for myself, and they made me feel like I had a slight impact on my classmates' decisions to not want to wear the mask. Many of them were also tired of wearing the useless things, and none of them I've seen this year wear a mask or catch any signs of COVID-19. I've also talked to many other students outside of that class that I was in about how they feel about wearing the masks, and if any of the people that I had talked to were wearing a mask, it was the simple fact of them just wanting to comply with the school and not try to make a scene. In conclusion, I feel if any responsibility is given to the school system, it's this. You guys can worry about our curriculum, and us as students and parents, we will worry about our own personal health. I will add one more thing. Any student that I have known that has been sent home because of contact tracing have not been sick, and they've been put behind 2 weeks behind schedule due to teachers not posting anything online. You guys are so focused on us wearing masks, it's setting back our ability to learn as students, and that's not right. Thank you.
All right, hi, my name is Lacey Simmerly, and I just gave him my address because I don't want people to know where I live. And I am a senior at Elizabethton High School, and one of my friends typed something that she wanted me to tell you guys. She said, I'm a student at Elizabethton High School, and I would like to make you aware of what I went through during this last spring semester. I got sick with flu A, which apparently deemed to be almost non-existent last year. The sickness turned into bronchitis. I did not have COVID-19, so therefore I went to school after I had gotten better from the flu. I had bronchitis. When I had bronchitis, I could still come to school. I went to school coughing as it is a normal sentence. People did not want me around them, even if I did have my mask on, even though the masks are supposed to help. The transmission of sickness. I even tried to show up to softball practice and got turned away multiple times by my coaches. I was not able to do much during this sickness because of my asthma, so I would cough a lot when I was trying to do physical activities. During this time, I went through 3 rounds of steroids and 2 rounds of antibiotics. Then after a month of sickness, I got to go back to play in softball. The day I went back to softball, I got contact traced. I had to miss the very first softball game of my junior year. Though I was sad about getting contact traced, not wearing the mask that holds all the germs a person breathes out helped me get over my bronchitis. The mask also makes my asthma act up, and I play 2 sports. I'm now a senior, and I have to choose in between wearing a mask and letting my asthma act up, or not wearing a mask and risking getting contact traced for 3 games in my last school year. I would like to know how I'm supposed to choose between the 2. Thank you for listening. And I would also like to say, ever since wearing the masks, there have been multiple statistics of adults getting RSV more now, and that adults don't really get RSV. That's more of like a kids thing. And how are you supposed to keep yourself healthy when you cough into a mask and you breathe it back in? That just doesn't make sense, because in that point you're hurting yourself. And I would just like to let that be a parent's choice, because say you do have elderly people you live with or you're around them more, then that's your choice to wear a mask, because in that sense you're protecting yourself and those people. So you shouldn't have to make everybody else wear a mask, because if they think it's right for them, then they should wear a mask. If they don't want to wear a mask and they think it's right for them, then they shouldn't have to wear a mask. And we should not be forcing that on them, because that is a personal choice, and it's in the Constitution that we have personal rights.
Todd Hallman. I live at 415 East K Street here in Elizabethton, so if anybody wants to send me gift cards or flowers, you can do that. I do not envy the decisions that you have to make, because since we started this in 2020, it's been a conundrum. One day it's this, another day it's this, constant changing for the whole duration since the beginning of this. I found the same to be true in the church, because you have people in the church that are very anti-vaccine. You have some that are absolutely, you need to get the vaccine, some wear masks, some don't. So I think, for one case, we don't have the chance to be virtual this year, not due to Elizabethton City, but I think due to the state. For my daughter, who's not old enough to be vaccinated, we don't have choice. The only choice is to put her into school or to take her out and put her on a computer with the state. And we like EHS, or we like Elizabethton City Schools, and we want to be in the city school system. So for me, by not having the mask, and I do think ultimately ends up being a personal choice, and I think that if people want to opt out, they should be able to opt out. If you want your kids to wear the mask, they need to be able to wear that mask. But I go back to just, I think the goal of everybody in this room ultimately is for quality education for kids. And we want a sense of normalcy for high school students and middle school students. This issue of COVID, I know that it's been said that, why were we not as concerned during the flu? Well, you can ask Mr. Wampler, you can ask Mr. Berry. I'm the one that is very, very, very concerned about the flu. I'm like, what the stats today? John Hutchins knows that too. And so this is not a new concern. I think the alarming rate of RSV and those other things are coming in is a result that we are so afraid of COVID, we are taking our kids to be tested. And so when they don't test, what used to be a common cold, I mean, if you were gonna pass gas normally, you wouldn't do that in public. But now you'll pass gas before you cough, because if you cough, you assume that you've got COVID. You get what I'm saying? So in this hypersensitive arena, we now take our kids to be evaluated, to be tested. And so, yeah, those test rates of RSV, I do believe are going to go up, and that's confirmed by several doctors that I've talked to. The bottom line is this. The same principle I use at the church, I think, is the principle that we need to use, and that's mutual respect. At the end of the day, we want quality education, and we want our kids to have a normal sense of being a student as possible. And so out of that mutual respect, yes, it's an issue of personal choice. That's fundamental to our being, fundamental to our understanding of the state. But out of respect for others, for instance, the church, I don't enforce it. Nobody enforces it at the church. We allow people to make their own decision. If they don't feel comfortable being around somebody without a mask, they avoid those people that don't have a mask. But we don't have this tension. I think more and more what we need to do is let go of the tension and lean into mutual responsibility and accountability, supporting each other, but ultimately supporting our students. They need everything that we can give them this year to have a sense of normalcy again. Thank you.
Anyone else? We got one right here. Just go ahead.
I'm wrong. I don't have anyone in the school system. I live in Quail Hollow. I wrote an article in the Elizabethton Star last year, and I've never had anybody refute anything in the article. And it gives the size, the microscopic size of the virus. There isn't a mask made that will stop it. The N95 will slow it down possibly. But if you look at the absolute size of the virus, there isn't anything made that will stop it. And I have copies of the article out in my car, and I'll bring a couple in for y'all to review if you'd like to. But I've had no doctor or anybody else refute the numbers. Okay. Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry, I did not get your name. What?
Ron Winter.
Thank you.
749 Phil Hollis Road.
Thank you.
My name is Derek Suggs. I'm from Elizabethton at 131 Slagles Road. I'm here about the contact tracing. When school began, my children were excited. They were excited to go to West Side, and the other one was excited to go to T.A. Duggar. For the first week, it seemed to go kind of smoothly until about halfway through when my youngest 6-year-old we were called and told that we had to come and get him because of contact tracing. We had to find some people to watch him because both my wife and I work. We were able to struggle through it, take a few of our vacation days and take care of him, and then we got him back in school, and when we got him back in school the next week, my other son, we were called to come and get him contact tracing. The problem with that was both of them were healthy. Nothing was wrong with them at all. They didn't even have any sniffles, not anything at all. I wasn't allowed to have the opportunity to make a decision for my children to go to school. They missed enough school last year. They're already behind, in my opinion. I'm just asking that, as a parent, that me and my wife would have some say-so in what happens to our children and their education. We pay good money to go to great schools. These are wonderful schools around here. And we would like to see our children educated, as I know you do also, because the schools are great here. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Last chance. Okay. Thank you again for your comments. We will now enter a time of discussion of COVID-19 safety protocols, and I'm going to ask Mr. Van Huss if he would just to update us. We update our COVID numbers on Mondays and Thursdays on the website, and so we have the latest numbers for our system compared to, say, last Thursday, and then he has some other items to share.
Thank you, Mr. Pless. I'd like to start again, yes, by sharing some information. First of all, the mask opt-out number at this point is 576 of our 2,675 students have opted out of the mask usage, so that's right at 21.5%, so 22%, so that means roughly 78% are wearing masks at this point. I can tell you that today the numbers, we have 67 positive cases. That's up 1 from what we reported last Thursday. So I think that's good news. That's any case we have is too much, but the fact that this is the first time it's kind of leveled out this year, so we continue to hope that that's a trend in the right direction. We have 137 students currently under quarantine in the school system based on the contact tracing that's been discussed here today. Another interesting piece, we have had, based on the mask usage and the guidance from Tennessee Department of Health, we do have about 30 students that have not had to be quarantined based on their guidance because of mask usage. So that has at least reduced that number some. So had we not been wearing masks based on the Tennessee Department of Health guidelines, that number would have been around 167 at this point. So there's some statistics for you based on what's going on in the system. Do any of y'all have any questions or comments on that?
I think it's good news that and there's no way to say what effect. I mean, we've just had about a week of the mandate, so we can't sit here and claim that that's just worked miracles, but it is good news to see that at least in the last 4 days, that that's leveled off. And I'm not sure, but the quarantine numbers, it sounds like, were lower maybe than they were on a number that was announced earlier. I think it was 190 maybe.
And that number was total, total composite since the beginning of the school year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right.
So, but thank you for that.
Yes.
Anything else?
So if you would like for me to share, I do have some thoughts on a way to move forward. If you would like for me to share that with you, and then that could start a discussion, certainly amongst you, about the direction you would like the school system to go. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
So a couple of things. First of all, everyone here that spoke today, they all have great points. I mean, that's the problem with this issue, is everyone that speaks, they have valid points. And unfortunately, it's on you as the board and myself as a director to make a recommendation to you and to make those decisions on what's the absolute best that we can come up with our students. I think someone mentioned earlier, we're all here for the same reason. We're concerned about our kids' health and safety, as well as being able to educate them. None of us that are education professionals ever dreamed that we would be sitting here having to make these types of decisions. But in the absence of anyone, the Department of Health or the state giving us any firm guidance on that, again, that falls to you at the local level. So with that being said, again, we're trying to navigate a difficult situation and, again, make what's best for students. So a couple of things for you to consider. So first of all, I would encourage you to consider extending the mask mandate with the opt-out through Friday, September the 17th. That is the day after the regularly scheduled September board meeting. So we would keep that in place until that point and give us a chance to continue to collect information and see where our system is at that point. A couple of other things. Beginning Wednesday, September the 1st, I would like for the board to consider allowing the school system to reinstitute temperature checks for all students, staff, and visitors when they come on campus. I think this is another layer of protection where we can determine if a student comes on campus that may have an elevated temperature that may be a sign of, could be a sign of many things, COVID being one of those. So I'd ask your consideration on that. We would continue to contact trace and assist the Carter County Health Department as we have in the past. Positive cases would be required to isolate based on the guidance from the Tennessee Department of Health. But then when we talk about those students, and many people have talked about the quarantine numbers, and we are equally concerned about students that are healthy, that never test positive for COVID, that miss instructional time. There's no doubt about that, and I know that you're concerned about that as well. So based on that, I would like to make this proposal. First of all, we would continue, as I said before, we would continue to contact trace all students based on the guidance that we receive. Once we identified any close contacts, we would contact the parent, and at that point in time, we would inform them of the guidance and recommendations from the Tennessee Department of Health. Then at that point, we would give the parents an opportunity to either take their child in quarantine for that period, the recommended period, with the certain testing options in between there to possibly return sooner. Or we would also consider allowing students, as long as they stay asymptomatic, continue to attend schools. A couple of things. We would request that they wear a mask. They don't have to do that, but we would request that. And second thing is we would ask them to come in each morning to the school, and the school nurse would do basically a well check. Check their temperature and check for any of those signs and symptoms that we're all pretty familiar with. That again could be the possibility, could identify COVID or again a whole host of other things. If at that point we have a student that is exhibiting any of those symptoms, then at that point in time we would follow the Tennessee Department of Health and they would go into protocol for a possible case there. So to me, now we're layering things. First thing is, if you're in close contact, that maybe raises you a level from another student. And then if you start showing signs or symptoms, at that point in time, then we would put you possibly into the protocol for a possible case. So this would allow a large number of students that remain healthy to continue to attend schools. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. It's nowhere close to perfect, but it's better than we are now. And again, lacking any other guidance that we have from anyone else to help us, again, it's up to you to navigate that. So to me, this is an opportunity to address the fact that many of the students that we send home never become positive cases of COVID. So I would suggest that we try this again through September the 17th. Allow us to our staff members to work through that and make a determination at the 16th whether or not it's wise to continue that practice or not. I would like to make one other exception to that rule. Household contacts would be exempt from this, because when you think about a household contact, you're talking about someone that's living in a home with a positive case, eating, drinking, possibly using the same restroom, all of those things. So my suggestion to you is we treat household contacts just as we have. But school-based contacts, we would allow them to remain and until they became symptomatic. I would retain the right as director of schools to make those decisions if we see any situation in a classroom, a grade level, or maybe a school that we felt like we needed to do something. The Commissioner of Education put out information late Friday that there's a waiver process that we can apply for a short-term closure of a school and allow us to go virtual But my understanding is the requirements to have that waiver approved are going to be pretty strict and pretty stringent. So the example she used was maybe a situation in a cafeteria where if you didn't have cafeteria workers, but you would have to verify that you don't have anyone else in the system that can go and help pack lunch bags for kids. So it's not going to be a rubber stamp type thing. And I've had a lot of people ask me about the school schedule and could we go back to virtual Wednesdays or the hybrid schedule or these things. And unfortunately, the answer to that right now is no. Unless last year we had to develop a plan. It's called a continuous learning plan. And at this point, the only time we can institute that continuous learning plan is if the governor issues a certain type of state of emergency, of which he has not done. So those scheduling options are not in place. Other than the waiver, again, they do allow us for those students that are in isolation or quarantine to do the virtual learning for that short period of time. But anything other than that's going to take approval from the state. So I think you saw where Washington County made the decision to close down because of their numbers. So they're basically taking their snow days, their inclement weather days, their stockpile days, and they're closing for a week. So if we had to do that and could not get a waiver, if we couldn't get a waiver approved, then that's what we would have to do if the situation arose to that level. And certainly we hope that does not. Again, this is not perfect, but the only way this works is if school staff, students, parents, and the community are willing to partner and work together. If children are sick, they have to stay home. It's that simple. If they bring them onto school and roll the dice, this will not work. And I'll be the first to tell you if I think it's not working. And I certainly hope that it will. But if we as a community want something like this to work and we truly want kids in school, then we need to lock arms on this and find a way to make it work. So, again, short of anything else, is everything that I outlined there in line with Tennessee Department of Health? No, it's not. But we can't do everything that's outlined in the Tennessee Department of Health guidelines right now anyway. So, absent someone telling us what we have to do, we have to make a decision based on what's best we feel like for our community. And I think this is a reasonable attempt to try to make that delicate balance between school safety, which every single person in this room I know feels the same way. Very concerned about the health and welfare of every student and every citizen. But again, at the same time, we have to provide an education. And we know, and speaking of that in light of everything that went on last year, the performance of our teachers and our students is absolutely amazing. I don't know if you've seen it, and we'll have some more information about this at the next board meeting, but our school system fared very, very well in many, many areas in spite of all those challenges. Now, did we go down? Yes, we dropped. We all know that. We have some great programs and plans in place to catch up, but they have to be there to do that. So that's something for you to consider, and any of those items that you would like to talk about and maybe throw out or whatever, but that would be my suggestion, to try this plan through September the 17th and then make a determination on the 16th.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And let me go back and say, I agree with Mr. Van Ness. I appreciate it takes a lot of time to prepare to come and speak in a situation like this. It's not something that people normally do on a regular basis, and I've stood right there before as a citizen and spoken and kind of understand that. So I appreciate all the comments. They were varied, and they were probably on both ends of the spectrum. But again, the central focus was wanting kids to be in school and wanting to be educated. And so that's the one point I think that we can all agree on. I want to remind everybody, this year's a little different than last year. Last year, we voted as a board to give the director of schools and his supervisory staff the authority to make the decisions on these type things, because that's what was allowable last year. Then that changed, and then that fell to us. So we're not on the front line necessarily, but we get reports from the front line. And I I know you all had a meeting. There was a meeting last week. Mr. Van Huss and Mr. Hutchins were gracious to kind of give us some guidelines. They were very positive about that meeting, and we heard a lot of those things tonight. But ultimately, that decision does fall to the Board of Education, and then it's his job basically to take that decision and make that work. We do appreciate his input. We appreciate all the time he has to spend. Probably 90% of his time in his first year of being a director has been COVID. And you know, that's just not something you want to start off with, but I think he's done a tremendous job handling that for our system. The best way I can explain it, there's a show, Chop Kitchen. And my opinion is the board is about like one of those cooks. So we get a mystery basket, and we get the Tennessee Department of Health, we get the CDC, we get the Commissioner of Education, we get the Carter County Health Department, and we get our experience, and then we open up our mystery box, and we're supposed to create something that's tasty and good. The only difference is here we're not really trying to please a panel of judges. We're trying to do what's best for the most important resource we have, and that's our children. I don't have children in the system anymore. I had two, and I'm very proud of what they received going through. I'm a retired educator out of the system and married to an elementary teacher who's on the front line every day. So this is our interest. I don't care what other systems do. Do we pay attention to what they do? Yes, but we look at their numbers and try to figure out why did they do that. But we're not a copycat system, regardless what anybody believes, and we'll make a decision that we think's best for Elizabethton City Schools, and we will trust other systems to do what's best for their system. So just kind of wanted to say that. So he's really not the person on the chopping block on Chop Kitchen. That's us, and that's fine. We wanted to be involved enough to be in this position. We did not know what we would get when we ran. I don't think we really cared. This is what we have right now to deal with, and that's what we'll do. So I do appreciate your time in coming to speak. One question I had for you, Mr. Van Huss, do we know right now the difference in numbers in home contacts as opposed to school contacts?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag because we had to start changing the way that we coded those things midway, and to just be quite frank, and we need to mention this group as well. The school nurses have just done an amazing job. They're seeing the students that they need to see for various health reasons that don't have anything to do with COVID. They're preparing safety plans and care plans for those kids. They're dealing with COVID. They're dealing with all those things. So we've changed midstream on how we keep track of that, and we're, you know, depending on the action tonight, we'll change a little bit more. So hopefully we'll streamline that process and be able to pull some of that information out. I'll try to get that information to you and share that with you. I think at the next board meeting, we're in the, you know, we have a way to code it now where we can pull that out.
Okay. And I do know when we met about 10 days ago, this option of the quarantine and being able to try to keep students in school was not an option at that point. And so this is new, so that's another ingredient that's been snuck in there. And, I think it's a good ingredient, especially to keep healthy students in class. And I think there's nothing worse than a healthy student to have to sit for 10 days. But that's what we had to deal with, okay? And we'll see how the board votes tonight on that. So, other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. I do definitely sympathize with you parents that have school-age children. I, like Mr. Pless, my girls graduated a few years ago, and I had several conversations with my wife last year. like, oh my goodness, what are these parents going to do when they were having to deal with this, the hybrid schedule, off and on, all that. And so, I think it's, our responsibility to make everything possible we can to keep our kids in school. And I think that, if we all work together, we can keep our children safe, our teachers healthy, so that they can educate our children properly. So I think it's just a matter of all of us working together and talking and discussing and cooperating with each other to do what's best for our children and our teachers.
I'll say, my daughters were both contact traced last year, and Mr. Van Ness knows my frustration with that. I spoke with him. They both were fine. But we, like Mr. Pless said, Mr. Van Ness said, it wasn't our decision last year. We were being told what to do. Now the health department has kind of put it on us. And I agree definitely with the contact tracing. If your child's not showing symptoms, why do you want to hold them out of school? But parents are going to have to do their job. When they do start showing symptoms, they're going to have to keep them at home, because that defeats the purpose of what we're all trying to do right now, and that's trying to get our kids in school and educate them. As far as the mask mandate, I can show you statistics that they work. You can show me statistics that they don't. You're going to have people who argue both ways. So I think the governor took care of that. He said it's a parent's choice. If you don't want your child to wear a mask, opt out. It's that simple. The quarantine was what really bothered me. The mask mandate doesn't bother me, because if I don't want my kids wearing it, the only thing I'll do is sign a piece of paper and they don't have to wear it. So it's an impossible situation we're in. Our kids are in an impossible situation. Nobody's going to win. It's not a left versus right, and not mask, vaccinated. I don't care about that. I want to make sure our kids have the best opportunity to get an education in person, and hopefully we don't have to go virtual. So that's my thoughts. I appreciate the work, and again, as I said, we're not a copycat system. If you remember last year, we were the first ones who decided to go back, even though it was virtual a day and hybrid. We were the first ones to go back. I think we're being the first ones who's kind of ignoring the health department quarantine guidelines too. But I agree with it. That's all I have to say about it.
Well, my opinion on this is we have to follow the science. And the science says that masks work. It may not be convenient. All three of my children went to Elizabethton City Schools. I have a son at Emory and Henry right now, where I paid tuition for him to go last year and paid for a parking pass, and he parked his car in my driveway and did his classes at Elizabethton Golf Course. So I sympathize with you, paying tuition and your children being at home. But I too have a sister that works in the school system who is medically compromised. She had a stroke. So I'm concerned about these kids. I worked at Harold McCormick in the secretary position I was there for 14 years. And I love those kids like my own. And you have to understand that there's some kids that don't go home to a mom and dad. And they go home to a great grandmother or an elderly aunt who may not have a car. And if that child's sick, that child can't get to the doctor. So school is her only out for her to get on that school bus and go to school. This mask is protecting those other children. So that may be not the popular vote, but I had COVID and I was in the hospital for 7 days. And if you're ever in that situation, it's scary. When someone calls you on the phone, your doctor calls you on the phone and says, you may not live through this. You may need to get some things in order because you're not going to survive. So I'm just saying this may or may not work, but it may work. And that percentage that you're giving, that 0.0000, if your child's that 1%, then you do care. So we've got 2,000 students that we care about. And yes, I want your kids to be involved in sports and have everything that we all had when we were seniors and we were in high school and we were in elementary and middle school. I want all your kids to have those memories. But this is a pandemic that we haven't had in 100 years. So we're learning as we go. We don't have a guidebook to say, here's what you do. We're learning it as we go. Nobody is alive to tell us, well, here's what we did. So we're trying to do the best we can to provide the best education in the safest environment for these students. You just have to bear with us, because like I said, this has been 100 years since we've had this, and we're learning with you. And we want this school system to flourish like it always does.
To the folks who say this mask doesn't do anything, I pretty much agree. I don't think this mask is great, but I wear it. Number one, I'm a coward, and number two, I'd like my children to wear it, so I model it as much as I can. I have one son still in our school system. My two oldest sons won't get vaccinated, and it breaks my heart because I fear for them. My youngest one came and asked to be vaccinated, and we took him and had it done. And he asked for, I guess, all the wrong reasons. He knew that if he had been vaccinated and there was contact tracing from a player on another team, that he wouldn't have to sit out because he'd had the vaccine. That's why he did it. But for whatever reason, I'm thankful that he did. I wish the other two would, but they haven't, and I can't make them. They're adults. I just think we just are trying to do the best that we can. We're trying to do what's right. I don't think anyone's questioned our motives. You may question where we stand on certain things, and that's okay. But we've not had a ton of direction since this. I mean, I just think folks in the entire country don't really know what they have to do or what's going on with this. We don't understand it all. If I would say one thing to you, it wouldn't be about the mask. It would be about getting vaccinated. And I'm no doctor, I'm just a history teacher, but I believe in getting vaccinated, and I think that's far more important than wearing the mask. Get them vaccinated if you can. And, coming from a history teacher, you can weigh that for what it's worth. Thank you.
I don't know if this is appropriate time, but I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendations set forth by Mr. Van Huss and his staff with the COVID-19 health and safety protocol.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Yeah, I want to just make sure I'm clear. So there were three or four things that he mentions. That include all that he mentioned.
Yes.
Okay.
And just for clarification, we would start the altered contact tracing and the temperature checks and all those. We would start those on Wednesday. We need a day tomorrow, if you move forward to get organized, so that process can run as smoothly as possible. We need to have some meetings with our nursing staff to get them in line and ready to go for that.
So if a student today was contact traced, they would have been sent home for 10 days.
Unless they do that testing option after day 5.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
If they stay,
All
yes,
right.
yes.
Now, if this were to go through, then on Wednesday, that parent would be contacted, maybe before, but that parent would be contacted and would have the option, if that child had no symptoms, to keep them home during that time, or to have them come back and follow that protocol, meeting with the nurse, wearing a mask, doing the same kind of questionnaire that I do if I go see my mother in the nursing home every time, with the temperature check and everything. And then as long as they were okay, they would be able to attend class.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So regardless of what point they're in, if they're in a quarantine protocol and they're still in it on Wednesday, that would be an option if they were
correct.
healthy.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Van Huss, we do have the staff capable of doing all this extra tracing.
We do. We've been talking about that and maybe a few modifications that we can do to make sure that we can handle that in the mornings.
Richard, when Eddie said that back, he said that if the student was not showing signs, they'll get a call about being contact traced, and it's up to the parent if they want to allow them to continue to go to school. But he said if they allow them to come to school, then they would have to wear a mask. They can continue to opt out of the mask.
They can, yes, that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that protocol doesn't change.
Right.
Okay?
But for this to work, we need cooperation from everyone to work with us and to help us. And it's stated in here, we'll be meeting again in here in a couple of weeks, and we can look at the data and see where we're at, and see if this is working or if it's going to be workable or doable. But we definitely need help and cooperation from you guys.
Yeah. The middle
We appreciate y'all being here.
The middle of May was the first, I don't know, the first time I think that we kind of breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief. And we were forced with a decision then, as some systems with a week or two left in school decided to lift the mandate, okay? And I know we talked and we decided to see it through. We'd done that for the entire year. We decided to go ahead and do it for that. It was a week to 10 days. It may not even been that long, but it was right at the end. But there was a sigh of relief, I think, on everybody when we finally got that news that we could let up. For all of us, I think we're sick. We're not sick that we have to make the decision. We're just sick that people are having to deal with this again. Science Hill's mourning the loss of a teacher, a 42, 43-year-old teacher because of this from yesterday. It's it's tough. It's tough. And I know we don't shut down the world over an incident or a few incidents, but we have to make the best thing we can do for the 2,700 students, 400 staff, whatever. There are a lot of people involved, and so you have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Miss Felicia, we do a roll call vote.
Ms. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. O'Quinn?
Aye.
Mr. Isaacs? Mr. Pless?
Aye.
Motion
So the
carries.
motion carries. And again, just to restate that, okay? You want to just,
You want me to read it?
restate that,
Sure.
just so for clarification.
So the current mask mandate with opt-out will be extended through Friday, September the 17th. All this will be reevaluated at the meeting on September the 16th. Beginning Wednesday, September the 1st, temperature checks for all students, staff, and visitors will be completed at each campus. We will continue to contact trace and assist the Carter County Health Department with that endeavor. Positive cases will be required to isolate based on the guidance from the Tennessee Department of Health. School-based close contacts will be identified and parents will be notified. They will be informed of the guidance from the Tennessee Department of Health and the recommendation to quarantine for the period of time based on that contact. Parents will then be given the option to either follow that quarantine period or allow their child to continue to attend school as long as they remain symptom-free. Along with that, we will request that those students wear a mask, and each morning they will be required to report to the nurse for a well check. And again, that well check is a temperature check and some basic questions about those symptoms that we're all familiar with. So we don't think that process will take probably a minute, probably less than that. Again, at any point in time, as students start showing symptoms, they will be required to go home and follow the Tennessee Department of Health guidelines for that quarantine, and now they become a probable case based on the symptoms. This will not apply to household contacts due to the nature of those household contacts. I will continue to follow guidelines and may, depending on the situation, may close a classroom or grade level, or follow the state guidelines based on those closures, depending on the situation in those rooms or those areas. That's it.
All right.
That would be, so typically, I think the quarantine period is 10 days, so it would be a 10-day period, unless they choose to do the test option, and then it could stop on day 8.
If they are quarantined, they will have options. Every teacher, I'm thinking of the high school, they can go virtual or have online.
Yes, and that will be up to the teacher to determine what lessons they need to put online or the work, but everyone that's in a quarantine should be provided work and assistance when needed.
Could you just get clarification, why can we not do, is it like a funding thing or something we had to opt in early on, why we can't do the virtual school like we did last year?
So now at this point, we can't do anything and alter our schedule and just say we're going to close down for 2 weeks and do virtual without these stipulations now outlined by the governor. Prior to that, we could have gone through the process to set up an online school, and we chose not to do that based on several funding issues, and we just didn't want to go down that road. Again, it's just like starting a completely new school, a new Elizabethton High School. So there's all kinds of things there, and we just didn't feel like the time frame that we had to make that decision was a prudent thing to do for us.
Any other questions? I mean, we've been here a little bit. We want to make sure everybody understands. So
we'll be getting the word out tomorrow on the modifications that you made today.
Okay.
That may not necessarily be a phone call to everyone. We may have to do something, en masse in some other ways, but we'll get the word out.
Okay. Okay, and again, just for the record, the next regularly scheduled board meeting is Thursday, September 16th at 5:30. And again, according to board policy, if you want to speak at that meeting, we'll do what we do every other regular meeting, and you do sign up 7 days in advance. And you'll contact Ms. Baird to let them know to make that request. Then that request comes to myself and Mr. Van Huss, and we make that determination. Basically, you have to give your name, address, and what you want to talk about. So, again, just for the record, that just if you want to do that, that's how that works. Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.